Everyone thought it was just an innocent visit, but everything changed in a month. Hello, greetings to the friends of the True Memoirs channel. If you've subscribed, today I'll tell you how I seduced my nephew James over the course of a month, and how he eventually couldn't resist chasing after me. My name is Sarah. I'm 36 years old. I'm married to Daniel, who's 47. We don't have kids, but we live in a spacious garden-surrounded house in a wonderful city, carried by Florida's tropical breezes, lined with palm trees. There's a pool in the garden, surrounded by lounge chairs and colorful flower pots. This place is my sanctuary, but sometimes it's also the silent witness to my loneliness. Daniel's a truck driver, always on the road for work. Sometimes weeks go by without him coming home. We're financially comfortable. Daniel's long hours provide us with a good life. Everything in the house is in its place. But when he's gone, the nights stretch on endlessly. The empty side of the bed, the silence of the house, and the rustling of branches hitting the window in the tropical breeze. They all come together to create a strange emptiness inside me. Our marriage is generally solid, and there's a deep trust between me and Daniel, but when he's not around, I sometimes feel lost. It all started with a favor my sister asked. Her son, my nephew James, 24 years old, was going to stay with us for a month to prepare for a military exam. My sister said, "Sarah, James needs a disciplined environment, and your house is perfect for him." Daniel, with his usual generosity, didn't hesitate even over the phone and said, "Sure, let him come." At that moment, I felt neither suspicion nor excitement, just an intention to help family. But I couldn't have predicted what was to come. I started waiting for James, made myself a coffee, and got ready in a nice dress since we were expecting a guest. After all, he was someone dear to me. A few hours passed. When James arrived and I opened the door, my jaw dropped in shock. He was no longer the little kid I remembered. Standing before me was a 24-year-old, tall, broad-shouldered, muscular young man. His black t-shirt highlighted the veins in his arms, and his dark brown eyes shone like a tropical sun. He was handsome enough to make any woman turn her head. When he dropped his suitcase and hugged me, the strength of his arms and the mix of fresh sweat and cologne in his scent left me dazed for a moment. "James, you've become a man. Handsome and strong girls must be chasing you," I teased with a laugh. He smiled shyly and said, "No, Aunt Sarah, I'm so busy with training and studying that I don't have time to think about girls." The seriousness in his voice, the focus in his eyes. I realized then that he was different from others his age. But there was a strange feeling inside me that I couldn't explain. I didn't pay much attention to it. That week, Daniel left for work again. It was just James and me at home. The first few days were calm, but I could feel something stirring inside me. James didn't notice, but I'd started playing little games to catch his attention. I had a plan he didn't know about. Something new and exciting was making my heart race. With Daniel away, the house was entirely under our control. I decided to make my first move with a simple lunch. I went into the kitchen and started tinkering with pots, feeling more nervous than usual. James moving around the house as a grown man, the faint sound of music coming from his room. It was both unsettling and oddly alluring. For lunch, I chose a sheer, slightly revealing outfit, a thin strapped dress that hugged my figure. It was a bold move, but I was curious about his reaction. Maybe I just wanted to amuse myself. When James came into the kitchen to help, I noticed he was trying to be polite, but his eyes couldn't escape me. As we set the table, I casually asked with a smile, "Is this outfit too much, you think?" He stumbled for a moment, then smiled and said, "No, Aunt Sarah, you look great, don't worry about it." His voice was genuine, but I caught a fleeting spark in his eyes. The conversation flowed easily during lunch. We talked about his exam, his training routine. "Your physique is impressive, like a TV star," I said, my voice tinged with admiration. He laughed, I work hard, thanks, he said modestly. Then he turned to me and asked, "You're pretty fit too, Aunt Sarah. Do you work out?" I burst out laughing. "No, I've always been like this, and Daniel loves me this way," I said. But a strange spark ignited inside me. That day, something shifted. James seemed to notice what I was doing, but he didn't say anything out of respect. The days passed calmly, but I grew more curious about seducing him with each one. One afternoon, washing dishes after lunch seemed like a good opportunity. I called out cheerfully, "James, can you come to the kitchen? The dishes have piled up." He came with his calm, shy demeanor, always ready to help. "I'll wash you dry," I said, handing him a towel. He agreed and started working beside me. I noticed his eyes occasionally drifting to the curves my t-shirt revealed. I deliberately dropped a spoon on the floor and bent down slowly, as if nothing happened. As I brushed my hair back while standing up, I could feel him watching me. I didn't even need to look. I kept washing dishes like everything was normal, but I could tell James was uneasy. His hands fidgeted in his pockets, his breathing a little faster. "Is something wrong?" I asked calmly, not turning to him. Startled, he quickly said, "No, Aunt Sarah, nothing's wrong." Then he added, "You've been on my mind during training." I smiled. "Don't overthink it. Everything will be fine," I said softly. We finished the dishes in silence, but the air between us had changed. He was unsettled, and I knew it was because of me. Exactly as I wanted. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the day. This wasn't just a simple game anymore. It was something new and slightly dangerous. James' looks, the slight tremor in his voice, they were awakening something in me. I wondered what would happen next, but I couldn't stop myself. The days had been calm, but that night I felt restless. The fire that had been building for days wouldn't die down. After making sure everything in the house was in order, I decided to check on James and see if he needed anything. As I approached his door, I heard him talking on the phone. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pressed my ear to the door. I didn't want to invade his privacy, but I couldn't help it. What I heard made my heart race. Man, he wouldn't believe my aunt. She's incredible, like she's testing me. "I don't know how much longer I can hold out," he said, his voice a mix of excitement and frustration. My face flushed, my ears burned. Hearing him say that made me realize he wasn't the kid I knew anymore. He was a man struggling with his desires. It sparked an intense curiosity in me. I didn't go in that moment, but learning how he felt about me, it pleased me. It pleased me. I went back to my room, but sleep wouldn't come. As I tossed and turned, I imagined what might happen if I took things further. Knowing James was in his room, lying in bed, thinking about me while pouring his heart out to his friend, it made me feel both guilty and powerful. The next day passed quietly, but my mind was stuck on that conversation. At breakfast, James hesitated when our eyes met. "Are you okay, Aunt Sarah? You seem a little distracted," he said with concern. "I'm just didn't sleep well," I replied with a smile. That day, we spent some time by the pool. I lounged on a chair sunbathing while he flipped through his exam notes. I was in a bikini, and as I applied sunscreen, I asked innocently, "James, can you help with my back?" "Sure, Aunt Sarah," he said, coming over. As his hand slid over my skin, I felt my body respond to his touch. "You're so gentle," I said with a laugh, but there was a hint of flirtation in my voice. "I try my best," he replied shyly, though I noticed his hands trembling slightly. That night, I passed by his room again. He was on the phone once more. "She doesn't stop, man. I don't know what to do. Thinking about her is driving me crazy." This time, The desire in his voice was unmistakable. He was on the edge, and I knew it. I kept listening until he hung up, waited a few minutes, then quietly returned to my room. I didn't want to rush things, but knowing he thought of me like that thrilled me. As I lay in bed, a smile spread across my face. The game was just beginning. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was the power I felt over him and how it made me feel alive again. One day, I decided to take a long, relaxing bath. As the hot water melted away my tension, James was on my mind. I realized I'd forgotten my towel in the bedroom as I stepped into the bath. I smiled. It was the perfect excuse. I called out softly, "James, can you grab the towel on my bed?" "Sure, Aunt Sarah," he replied, and moments later he appeared at the bathroom door. "Can you come in? I'm getting out, and the floor will get wet," I said innocently. He hesitated for a second, but stepped inside, holding out the towel while averting his eyes. I could see him trembling, trying to control himself. As I took the towel, our eyes locked, and time seemed to freeze for a moment. Standing there in the steamy bathroom with just a towel, I watched him quickly look away and mumble, "We'll go?" before shutting the door behind him. As soon as he left, I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. I was getting to him, but it was affecting me too. As I tried to sleep, I imagined what was going through his mind. He was clearly wrestling with his desires, just like me. The day had been calm, but by night I decided to test his limits further. I slipped into a light nightgown and went to the living room where he was engrossed in the TV. I felt his eyes follow me as I passed by. I paused in the kitchen, pretending to get water. "James, it's late. Don't you want to rest?" I asked softly. "I'm not sleepy, Aunt Sarah. I'll sit up a bit longer," he said, his voice shaky despite his calm tone. "I'm going to bed. Let me know if you need anything." "I'll be in my room," I said, walking toward the door. I glanced back. His eyes were on me. Sleep eluded me again that night. I kept replaying the day in my mind. I got up, tiptoed to the hall, and stopped outside James' door. I knocked lightly, and he said sleepily, "Come in." He was in bed, bare to the waist but awake. "I couldn't sleep," I said. "I was thinking about you. You've been quiet lately. Are you okay?" His voice trembled. "Yeah, Aunt Sarah, sometimes I just feel lost. I want to have fun, but I'm focused on studying." I took his hand and said, "I get it. Emotions get heavy when you're alone." My touch seemed to both calm and excite him. I could see it in his eyes. "You're special to me, James. Sometimes I wear revealing clothes because I feel comfortable. But if it bothers you, I can change. Guys think a lot, even about their aunts," I said with a laugh. He looked at me with a mix of relief and desire. "It doesn't bother me at all, Aunt Sarah. Like you said, seeing a woman like you, any guy would get excited, even if she's his aunt." I knew the game had begun, but I didn't push further. I slowly pulled my hand back, said, "Good night, sweetie, sweet dreams," and left. Daniel came home for a few days, and the house felt normal again. But James and I shared a secret now. His looks grew hungrier, with subtle flirting and suggestive glances. Everything was waiting for the right moment. One evening, we decided to have a family barbecue. Daniel tended to the grill while I prepared salad and rice in the kitchen. Everything seemed peaceful, but I felt an undercurrent of tension. James stayed calm around Daniel, but then he appeared behind me in the kitchen. At first, I thought it was Daniel, but it wasn't. He was so close, I could feel his breath on my neck. He leaned in and whispered, "Aunt Sarah, need help?" I froze for a moment. "I'm fine. But what are you doing?" "Daniel's at the grill. We shouldn't be this close," I said, my voice shaky. He smiled. "He's busy with the meat. He won't notice I'm helping," he said softly. It felt like a punch to the stomach. He stood there as I chopped vegetables, but I couldn't focus. "You're teasing me, just like I've been teasing you, aren't you?" I said, half joking, half serious. "Maybe, just a little," he replied, playful yet earnest. He stepped away before Daniel came in. During dinner, our eyes kept meeting, but Daniel remained oblivious. When Daniel left again, the house grew quiet, and our game picked up speed. One evening, after a bath, I slipped into a silk nightgown and lay in bed, sleepless. Knowing he was next door thinking of me made me smile. I went to the living room in the light nightgown again. He was lost in the TV. I passed by, grabbed water from the kitchen. "James, it's late. Don't you want to rest?" I asked gently. "I'm not sleepy, Aunt Sarah. I'll stay up," he said, his voice tense. "I'm going to bed. If you need anything, I'll be in my room," I said, heading to the door. I looked back. His eyes were glued to me. That night, sleep escaped me again. I got up, went to his room, and knocked. "Come in," he said groggily. He was awake in bed. I couldn't sleep. "I was thinking of you. Are you okay?" I asked. "Yeah, Aunt Sarah. I just feel lost sometimes," he said. I took his hand. "Emotions intensify when you're alone. Don't worry," I said. My touch excited him. I could tell from his eyes. "You're special to me, James. If my clothes bother you, I can change," I said. "It doesn't bother me, Aunt Sarah. A guy can't help but get excited seeing a woman like you, even if she's his aunt," he said. I knew the game was on, but I stopped there. "Good night, sweetie," I said and left. When Daniel returned after dinner, the clock struck midnight, and he passed out after a few glasses of wine. I went to James' room. He was waiting. I closed the door and said, "Your body's so strong, sweetie. You make me tremble. Are you sure Daniel's asleep? I don't want him ruining the game," he said. I kissed him and said, "Don't worry. I'm all yours." We spent 2 passionate hours together. Then I slipped back to my bed to avoid waking Daniel. James laughed. "Daniel doesn't know what he's missing. His last week on the road is your last week here. Let's make the most of it," I said. Daniel left early the next morning. When I opened the door, James was waiting to come in. "I want you to leave your mark all over this house this week," I said, wearing just a t-shirt. He approached and kissed me with youthful fire. "This is the best trip of my life." "Thank you, Aunt Sarah," he said. We spent that night together. The next day he was at his exam and came back exhausted, falling asleep. I didn't disturb him. He'd need his energy for the days ahead. We lived our relationship for a week. Then he returned to his city. As he left, I laughed. "You shocked me. What have you turned into?" "Aunt Sarah this time here was incredible. If I get a job, I might come back, if you'd like," he said. "My door's always open." "Well, I said with a wink. We talked for hours, then said goodbye. I'm still waiting for a message from him, telling me when he'll visit. I told Daniel, and he's fine with it. If you liked this wild story, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and like the channel. See you in the next video.